Okay, this is not my story, but it really makes me angry, and I just want to post it everywhere so I can get the word out. I first saw this story online, and I realized it was becoming sort of an epidemic of sorts, with many copycat criminals repeating it all over the country. I think it started in California around 2012 or so. A mom brings her 3-year-old to the park for some fun outside. The little girl is so happy to be able to play on the swings and slides. The mom lifts her baby up to hold her on the monkey bars, and the little girl screams in agonizing pain. When her mom looks, she sees razor blades are superglued to all the bars. Then she looks at her daughter's hands to see blood flowing out from severe cuts. How sick is humanity to do something like this? The entire playground had razor blades all over it. The swings, slides, the monkey bars. Whoever did this should be hung. The news reports on this atrocity and other sickos begin to copy the idea. Please check the playground equipment before letting your kids play on them. It is so sad that we have to do this, but it has become necessary. Good Lord in heaven, what is this world coming to? I was in my early 20s, and I was in a group of like-minded people who used to go ghost hunting in old abandoned farmhouses. There were many around the area where I lived. We were out in the country, and this is one of the more fun things to do. We probably had been in over 20 houses or so. We had a few scary experiences, but nothing I would call really paranormal. Most of the time, we just drank and hung out like a group of friends would. A couple of people claimed to have experiences, but nothing ever happened to me, and there was nothing definitive in my opinion. There were smudges on pictures and some sounds on the recorders, but nothing really certain. Some of the houses did have a very scary feel to them, though. One of the houses was really cool. It was really big, maybe 3,500 or 4,000 square feet. It was empty and somewhat overgrown. Overall, it was really spooky. So, one night, my friend and I took our girlfriends to this house. We were going to tell them stories and get them good and scared. We just wanted to have a good time. The girls really did not want to go. We told them it was fine and we had been there before. It was very private and nobody ever went around there. No other houses around, just a dirt road which was largely untraveled. I did not expect them to resist so much, but both girls just didn't feel right about it. But we ended up convincing them, and they reluctantly agreed. We parked a little ways away from the house, so we had to walk through the spooky woods a little, way before we made it to the house. We started to tell the girls scary stories to set the mood before arriving at the house. Both girls said several times, "Let's go back," and we should just turn around and so forth. We refused and kept them going towards the house. We got to the house and both girls were impressed. This house was cool and different. I always thought it would be really nice if someone were to fix it up. It was really old and had many little nooks and crannies that you just don't see in modern homes today. Somebody took some time when building this house. The girls were becoming more relaxed as we settled in for a fun night. It wasn't but maybe an hour that we were there that the whole downstairs all of a sudden lit up from headlights. There was a car approaching. My friend thought maybe it was the cops coming to check it out. We looked out the window and saw an old junk of a pickup truck. All of us got really scared because nobody comes out here, especially at night. My thought was that it was another group doing exactly the same thing we were doing, and I was hoping that we knew them. We stayed out of sight and watched to be careful. Instead, 3 men got out of the truck. They were like white trash guys with tattoos and ripped shirts and jeans. They all looked dirty and just overall scummy. They were the kind of guys that you didn't want to bump into on a dark night, far from the ears of other people. We all began to panic. I was so scared. My friend said to just be quiet and they would eventually leave. They pulled something out of the truck and dropped it onto the ground. We don't know what it was, but it was heavy and made a thump when it landed. No one said it, but I bet we were all thinking the same thing. It was a dead body. We didn't know what to do, so we just waited. They stood out there and smoked, and we just waited quietly, hoping they would go away. We could have left out the back, but to get to the back of the road, we would have to go by them. Now, I would like to say that it was my friend or one of the girls, but the truth is, it was me who dropped my flashlight and then kicked it by accident to prevent it from falling. The men outside heard the noise, and all of them turned towards the house. They pulled out a spotlight and said to come out. They claimed to be police and said come out or they were going to come in. I heard one of the men say, "It's probably just kids, let's go get them." They headed towards the house, and we decided we had to get out. We started for the back door, staying low as possible to the ground. The men came in the house and started saying things like, "Come on out, boys, or is it gonna hurt even more?" I was so scared because these were the type of guys who I thought could be capable of anything. I certainly did not want to become their Saturday night entertainment, not to mention what they might do to the girls. It felt like an eternity when they were looking around the house and we were trying to make our way out of the dark. They at least had flashlights, but we couldn't turn ours on without giving away our position. Luckily, we had been in this house a few times before, and basically had a good idea of the layout, which was somewhat extensive. The advantage got us out of the back. We decided to run through the woods instead of heading straight to the road. We made it to the trees and looked back. I was so scared they were following us, but they weren't. We could see their flashlights looking around the house. One of them stepped out the back door and pointed the flashlight in our direction. We took off running through the dark woods. We went quite far before we turned on our flashlights. We eventually made it back to the car and got out of there. After it was over, we had a laugh about it, and everyone teased me as being the idiot who dropped the flashlight. I was so happy to be safe, I didn't even care. We all wondered what they had in the back of that truck. We all decided that it must have been a cooler, and that was that. One morning, I was waiting at my bus stop for the school bus to come and pick me up for school, as usual. I'm normally there about 10 minutes early. Depending on the bus driver, the bus could be a few minutes early or late. It was drizzling rain outside, and that musty smell was in the air. A couple of minutes after I arrive, a school bus pulls up. It was old, with chipping paint, and the district writing was not on the side. There were no kids on this bus either, and my stop was one of the last. The driver says, "Get in." I know this is not my bus, or even a real school bus for that matter. I just shook my head no. The driver was an older guy, in his 50s maybe, with messy hair and wearing sunglasses even though it was raining. At first he smiled and he was more friendly. After I had refused, he ordered in a loud tone, "Get in." I was not going to get on that bus. He asked me, "Do you want to stand in the rain all day?" I said there were no kids on the bus and no writing on the side. He answered, "That's okay. This bus is going to get painted, and I was the first stop today. Just get in and you will see." I refused. I could tell he got frustrated and said, "If you don't get on, I'm going to leave you and you will miss school. Do you want that?" I quickly responded, I was okay with that, and I'll get my dad to drive me. Then he did something that I will always remember. Instead of being angry, he gave me a knowing smirk and an almost understanding nod. It was almost like he was telling me that I gave the right answers and did the right thing by not getting on that bus. He just shrugged and he drove off. My mom reported it to the bus company, and I never saw him again. But I pray that no other kids ever got on that bus. My family used to take vacations up in Canada. We would go fishing and just enjoy the wilderness. We went every year when I was little. One year, when I was 17, I decided to take a trip up there by myself. My parents trusted me, so they let me go. I think they liked the idea of me not playing video games for a few days. I was really excited to go by myself and have a solo adventure. I felt so exhilarated. I brought my camping supplies, some food, fishing equipment, but no weapons other than a couple of knives for filleting and a buck knife. I did bring my phone, but there was no reception up there. My second day there, I went deep into the woods exploring. I saw tons of animals, and the forest was alive with creatures. I was checking out plants and trees, all sorts of stuff. My only concern at that time were bears, but I did not see any. I found a pile of rocks. They looked to be placed there by someone. They were built into a little structure, like about 2 feet tall. I thought it was weird because there were very few people around. And why would someone do that anyway? I shrugged and continued on with my adventure. Maybe a few hundred yards or so, I found another one. Then another. I saw maybe 5 or 6 around. It was kind of creepy. Who did this and why? Then I stumbled upon an old torn tent. At first I thought someone must have abandoned it. It was so dirty and torn all over. I decided to go check it out. After all, I was on an adventure. There were tons of beer bottles and cans laying around. I could see into the tent, and no one was there. So I looked around. There were empty shells and casings lying around, so I figured this guy must have been some kind of a hunter. I took a close look into the tent. The smell was almost overwhelming. There were animal carcasses everywhere. There were mostly small game left there to rot. All of them were cut open, and the innards were left laying around. Blood puddled in parts of the tent, and it was never cleaned. I began to realize that this tent was not abandoned. Whoever used it was there not too long ago. The casings weren't overly rusted, and the bottles were fresh. There were supplies in the tent, and a lot of knives. This guy wasn't eating these animals. He was just torturing them and cutting them open, removing the insides and leaving it all around his campsite and his tent. I thought to myself, how could anyone sleep with that stench? I figured I'd better get out of there and started on my way back. As I started to leave, I noticed a very large man in a clearing not far from the tent. He was huge, standing at least 6'6". He was holding a rabbit by the scruff of its neck. It was still barely alive and dripping blood. I did not see a gun, but he did have a very large knife. The man looked like an evil Grizzly Adams. He had a big beard and looked disgustingly unclean. He probably smelt as bad as the rotting carcasses. He stopped in his tracks and he just stared at me. My heart was beating so fast and I was almost petrified with fear. I don't think I was ever so afraid and scared in my whole life. I said I was sorry and that I was just passing through. He didn't move. He didn't even speak. I don't think he even blinked. I began walking fast to get away from him. I looked back hoping that he was not following me. I was greatly relieved to see that he still hadn't moved. After I was maybe 50 yards away or so, I heard this terrible, extremely loud, blood-curdling scream. It was almost demonic, and more of a growl. It was so loud that I thought he was right behind me. He wasn't, thank God. His scream lasted forever. I just started to run as fast as I could. It almost felt like I was flying over the ground. I was moving so fast. He continued on with that screaming for a long time, and I still heard him after I was long gone from there. I'm guessing he just wanted to scare me away, but I have no doubt this guy would have had no problem cutting me up like those poor little animals. I was sure he had to be the one that placed the rock piles around. It must have been some kind of a marker or signal, but who or what was it for? I later referred to this guy as the Animal Butcher. Needless to say, I never went that direction again. I thought if I ever saw one of those rock mounds again, I would just turn around and right back the way I came. On a positive note, I did get my adventure. I was sick with the flu and bedridden, or more accurately, couch-ridden. My husband was away on business, and I was home with my 14-year-old daughter and my 12-year-old son. It was about 9:30 p.m. when the doorbell rings. I tell my kids to ignore it and keep laying on the couch. It rings again. Whoever it is can come back tomorrow. Then came a knock, followed by another doorbell ring. This person must have rang the bell and knocked for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Finally, I had it, and I dragged myself off the couch. I opened the door, and there was a short man of little stature. He was clean-shaven and dressed in all black. In front of him, he had lined up a whole set of tools on a towel, which I assumed were lockpicks. He was shocked when I opened the door, and he apologized. He said he must have had the wrong house. He gathered up his tools quickly and got in his little white van, and he left. I reported it to the police, but I don't know if they ever got him.